In this video, I'm going to be talking about how I use org mode to organize my life as best as I can, because I'm not the most organized person in the world. I remember in elementary school where they gave out those agendas at the beginning of every year and you were supposed to like put your homework in. I would always just like store it up here, and it wasn't the best method of doing so. So I've had to learn how to use a calendar, etc. in my adult life, and it's been painful. But let's get into how I use org mode for organizing my life and take some of what I do or none of it, or tell me about how you use org mode in the comments below. Let's switch over to my screen in Emacs and we'll go from there. So this is my org directory. This directory is actually source controlled to a Git repo, and it's where I do probably about 70% of my day-to-day on a computer. Besides programming and coding, this is where I keep all of my writing, everything. And we'll go through every directory and kind of talk about what they are, every file, and show you how I do captures to really speed up my workflow and make sure that I'm remembering everything that comes to my mind. So let's start. So my first file here is calendar.org. In that file, all events and deadlines exist. So if a item has a date attached to it, it will be found in this file. The reason so is that I take this file and I push all of those items to my Google Calendar using something called org-gcal. It's really the only reason that I use Google Calendar is to push out for notifications on my phone. Other than that, I don't really care about syncing back and forth. Contacts.org is literally a file of all of my contacts, their birthdays, if they are people that are in my phone, their emails, their phone numbers, last contacted date, and notes about the person as well. That file is hundreds of lines long and is pushed out to my org agenda. So whenever I open up the calendar in Emacs, it has birthdays and it has next to-dos and everything associated with my contact list. Done is a running list of everything that I have accomplished since starting use of org mode. It is essentially a file that I use to CYA, as the industry term goes, but to make sure that I know when I have accomplished things. And if somebody were to say, hey, did you do this? I can go back and say, yes, on this date, I did it. Here it is. It's a really nice file to just keep things archived. I don't delete things when they're done. I just mark them as done and then move them to this file so that they live forever in an archive. Ideas is a file that I don't use so much because it's not really within my workflow. I don't really think to use it, but it's just a file of things that don't fall under a project. Inbox.org is probably my most used file. And what this is a capture file for everything that I need to do. It lives in here until it is either done or it's filed into this projects.org file. We'll talk about that in a second. But it is my inbox. It's kind of in the David Allen getting things done technique. It's the capture place where everything goes and then is refiled away. Unless it's an event, I usually just capture events to events. Same thing with contacts. Notes is just everything else. Notes for everything. Just stuff that doesn't really fit anywhere else. Things that I want to remember, sites, videos, whatever, it lived in notes. And finally, projects is a projects file where I have a top level header with a project and then all of the subheadings underneath it that are things that I need to do for that project. It's the easiest way for me to kind of wrap my head around a grandiose project and to see the next items that I need to do within them. So that file is open probably just as often as inbox is, because I go through it and I say, what's my next thing that I need to do for this project? Or what project has a deadline in my calendar, for example, and that's the next thing that is kind of the thing to do. If a item is marked with a deadline, that's generally top of priority. And then from there, it's just, I go through the projects file every evening and mark it as stuff that I need to do the next day. I'll show you how I capture things, because this is something that I think people wanted me to talk more about on that last video I released about switching over to GNOME and how I integrated keybinds with Emacs. I hit Control-Shift-C on my system anywhere, and I am brought to a capture template. In that, you see to-do, event, deadline, project, idea, contact, and note. So to-dos go to my inbox.org, events go to my calendar.org, deadlines go to calendar as well, projects obviously go to the projects file, and I don't really use that one for capture almost ever. Ideas to the idea.org file, again, I don't use that one as much. Contacts are, I'm prompted through a contact, and I'm asked for a birthday, a phone number, email, and those are then pushed to the contact file. And then note finally is a note, and it goes to my note.org file. So it looks something like this. Let's say I need to remember to do something as an inbox item. So I'm just going to hit T, and a buffer is going to come up, and it's going to ask me for the task. And there's just say, remember to post this video. It's captured into a buffer now, and I just have to hit Control-C, Control-C to save it. One thing that people use a lot of in org mode is something called tags. So you can enter a colon and then all in caps. You could add something like this because it's a video task, and it will just now be searchable when I want to find the video tasks. From there, for example, you could also add a date to it with Control-C, Control-S, and it will bring up a calendar and ask you for a date that you may have scheduled into your calendar to accomplish the event. And if you're not scheduling, you could also add a deadline to it with Control-C, Control-D, and that will add a deadline for it as a hard and fast rule. Now, generally in my inbox, I don't add dates for deadlines or events because that is more specified by the calendar org file. I just hit Control-C, Control-C, and that is now saved into my inbox.org file. Now, let's say I want to add a deadline. So I open up with a deadline, and then I can actually add this to the calendar.org file. If I want to add a contact, I can just simply go C, and then I'm prompted for all of the contact information. So YouTube, example, and then I'm asked for an email, yt@yt.com. Anybody that's read Snow Crash by Neil Stephenson will appreciate that one. Phone number, let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. Awesome. And then you can add a birthday into it. Just go through your calendar and let's say May 2nd is the birthday. And finally, address, I don't generally do that. And that is fully captured now to a contact. We'll just Control-C, Control-K to get out of that. My template for notes is just hit N in that capture buffer, and then just ask for a note title, and then you can start adding stuff underneath it if need be for notes. Pretty straightforward. So this is an example org file. I'm not going to go into my personal files because there's a bunch of information that's not really relevant to anybody except for me. So in this file, we have a top level to do. We can add headers underneath that to say accomplish this first. And in order to actually finalize or finish this task, to mark it as done, I have to mark the subtask as done. It kind of makes sense in project management. Let's say you have an overarching task to do, and you have all the subtasks that would allow that to be finished. You have to accomplish those first, and then you can mark the broader task as done. So let's say I want to mark this is done, and you'll see at the bottom it says to do state change is blocked. You simply have to mark this is done, and then you can finally mark this is done. It makes sense when you wrap your head around it. But let's just get rid of that for now, and let's talk about clocking in, because this is something that I do every single day, and it's a way to track my time for anything that I'm working on. I'm going to highlight this to do or go up to the header level, and I'm going to hit space MTS, and that is going to clock me in on this task. You'll see here that there's a logbook underneath it, and there's actually a clock here that is starting the timer for when I am working on this task. Whenever I'm done that task, I can either move it to done and the task will automatically stop and clock out at the very bottom here because there's 0 time, the line is removed. Or if I need to put more time in, I can actually mark it as back to do. And that will also save the clock, but then we'll clock in the next time that I need to work on the task. So let's say it's a longer task, something that's going to take multiple hours, for example. I can clock in, clock out. And it keeps all of my logbook saved so I can go back and look at how much time I've spent on task A or B. It's very nice. So you'll note that I have a scheduled line underneath this task. And what this allows me to do is we're going to add this task to my org agenda with Control C, open bracket. You'll see at the bottom, file move to front of agenda file list. Org agenda, you can have literally dozens, if not hundreds of files with dates and to-dos and everything, and add them to your agenda. And this will amalgamate everything into one place for you to look at as your task list for the future. So let's say I want to open this agenda with space OAA. You can see that today on Wednesday, I have this task as scheduled to do. And if I added more tasks, you would see them down the list as to next things to do. You can also look at all of the tasks that you have to do. So with space OAT, this will actually show you all of the tasks that you need to do in a day. These are habits. So these are reoccurring things that I want to do on a daily basis. And when I would do them, I just check them off and go through making sure that they are done. As you can see here, I actually have a daily file. And this is kind of contentious in the org community. Do you have one file with all of your to-dos in it? Do you have like hundreds with to-dos? And who knows? It's all up to the user how you want to organize this. But I do daily journals. So I go through and I'm like, this was March 25th. I did not sleep very well on that day. 1 out of 10 sleep quality. But in here, you can I track metrics. So I track like things that I'm doing on a daily basis for my health. How much water have I drank? This is an incomplete file, by the way, because I think I drank more than 800 milliliters of water that day. But you can go through and you can just see, hey, what did I do for gym workout? What did I do for this? And then I go through and have habits that I mark off on a daily basis. These are reoccurring things that I want to do every single day. I have a work priority list, so I'll put in priorities that I want to accomplish for the day, as well as goals for outreach via email and calls. And then I track wins and revenue generated in that day, and also time spent with my family. I track things like my daily prayers and did I do some language learning today? And what went well today? What went badly? What can I do better tomorrow? In my evening routine, I just go through like preparation for tomorrow, check off those things, and then kind of do a final daily reflection of like, how was my focus today? How was my energy? What was the most impactful thing that I did? Key lessons. And then underneath that, I have like notes and insights for that day. Generally, that's where I write like a journal entry or something like that. You don't have to do daily files, but something that I've actually added to my Emacs configuration is a way to add a daily file with create daily file. When I hit enter, it actually will create the day for today, April 16th, and then it will actually just go through the list, and I will every morning add this file to my journals and go through and say, hey, this is what my sleep was, blah, 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 blah. If you want me to go more in depth about this file, post in the comments and I'll talk about how I kind of built it out and things that I've tracked, etc. I'm going to go back to my org directory here. I'm going to go to the org Rome directory. This is where literally all of my notes live. If something is significant enough that I keep a note of it, I bring it into here. And what org Rome actually is it's kind of a clone of Rome Research, if you're familiar with it. Similar to Obsidian or LogSec, you can actually link notes together. You have an idea over here and it links to this idea, and you can actually generate like a UI. People coming from Obsidian will be familiar with like the graph that it's able to produce. I have a key bound to the space YU, I want to say. Here we go. And it opens up like the neuron graph of links of files and everything. And it's interesting to take a screenshot of, but not very useful. So I don't really use it that much, but it's something that people, like to see coming from Obsidian. In here, you'll see that I have like a writing folder and my writing legacy. Again, this is all part of my source controlled org directory. So this is all saved when I write on a daily basis. I just back it up to Git, and it is where all of my writing lives, stuff that I want to post, stuff for my blog, ideas for videos. There is probably like hundreds, if not thousands of pieces of writing in there. It's insane. Plus I have a legacy in Markdown before I came back to org mode and all of that. So Rome is a very cool system in that you can let's say I want to open up a file and do another example. And let's say I want to like link it to like, I don't know, my theology header. I can actually create a link here that will go back to what I have as a hub for my individual lines of exploration. So if I click on this, it actually has like a bunch of different areas of study and notes and everything. And it links to a central hub, and then that goes out to the spoke in the UI, if you want to get all technical about it. But something I've really been exploring lately is, instead of writing a blog per se, is creating something called a digital garden, where you continually adjust and prune and build on previous ideas, something that's more living than just a static blog. Historically, blogs are like chronologically ordered, polished posts that just live forever. What I've kind of been looking at doing is having what is more akin to something that is continually growing, changing as my understandings and my thoughts and just who I am as a person shifts and changes over the years. And it's something that I've been exploring how I want to do it. In a future video, I'll talk about how I publish to a Hugo blog directly from org mode, because Hugo has native org support. And that's kind of how I'm thinking of how I want to do this, is that with these properties that Roam creates, it creates an ID. What I want to do is create a function that will link an ID to a HTML page in my blog. So let's say I have this concept of joy and I want to link it to this concept of love, for example, right? What I want to do is create a function that will take the IDs and just spit it out into a HTML hyperlink for the blog, so that when I publish, it will just essentially follow everything around as it was in my org Roam directory. If you've designed something like this, hit me up and show me kind of how the function would work. It's something that I've been mulling over for a little bit of time, and it's something that I think that would be really cool to add to a digital garden like experience. So you can see here, this is a little bit better of a visual representation of how I would create a project. Let's say I have like this overarching project that I have, and I need to have individual to-dos underneath it. Something that you could do is actually create checkboxes, and then you'll see in the org mode syntax, you can actually check these things off and have progress on the task right here. It's kind of nice to have. And then I can mark this task as done and move on to the next one, etc. Generally, how I keep these in line is I will just copy this and add that to my done file so that it's archived for the future. And then I will just delete that in the project, but it will be living forever in my done org file. As you can see, this is like a massive rabbit hole and extensible to the nth degree. I haven't even talked about like creating tables and doing literate programming and that sort of thing, or even how I write everything in org mode for my blog, and I even write contracts in org mode and export them. We can talk about all of that in the future. Let me know in the comments what really interests you about org mode and how I do things in my workflow. And I will create videos about it in the future, because it's something that has been really impactful in my own life, keeping things in order, making sure that I'm getting things done and I'm not missing things. Truthfully, it is game changing when you wrap your head around it. But yeah, if you like this kind of thing, feel free to stick around and subscribe to the channel. I talk about first principles in computing and whatever else is on my mind. So if that interests you, come along for the journey. As always, God bless. We will catch you in the next video. Take care, everyone.